An environment in which many students feel an immense pressure to keep up their academic work. An environment in which students lose all their motivation to pursue in academics because they've been told that they're more stupid than another student. That because that they've bunched up together, that their curriculum has been dumbed down for them, and that's the only way they'll be able to pass through school. That is what the environment that opposition has tried to sell us today. But simply, it doesn't work. It isn't the right environment to raise our children, and on side opposition, we won't stand for it. 2 points of clash for the House today then. First, does this empower students to be able to work better? And second, what does the social environment of the school look like on their side of the house? So first, their big push here was that it would easily empower students from both low ability and high ability to be able to work better. So let's first look at the low ability student. They first told us here that low achieving students get more specific time with teachers, but two responses here. First, they immediately lose motivation the second that you tell them they never have the capacity to be able to improve or to be able to learn with the other kids. I mean, you just have to look at the example of telling any child that they're not good enough to be with the rest, and you'll know that they'll lose motivation. They're not going to be empowered to work harder, they're going to be empowered to work less because they think that they're worse than another student. But second, even if that doesn't exist, the low ability students still aren't learning at a similar rate, because they try to tell you in their model that students who are learning at a higher level, they're going to have streamlined education, they're going to be doing university level things in primary school. What that means objectively is that these lower ability students are going to have their curriculums dumbed down. It makes it more extremely difficult for them to even catch up, because now you just have them tailored onto a curriculum that didn't even benefit them, that didn't even teach them anything from the beginning. But second, they tried to claim the idea that it allows teachers to teach them with new methods. First, note that teachers already have the ability to tailor their teaching style to students across a range ability classroom. It's not something that's mutually exclusive to their model, where you only get teachers having different sorts of teaching styles for different students when you separate the students. You can still see that when a teacher goes through different students, they're going to talk to them in a different way. They're not talking in one monotone style, one teaching that is so rigid that they never change at all. But every single student gets different treatment, and that means that they're still able to get different teaching styles and alternatives that benefit them. Okay, now third, they tried to tell us that low achieving students feel much more comfortable. First here, we tell you that the self-esteem of the students is always going to be worse at the point where you tell them that they're going to be different from everybody else, that they're not as good as everybody else. But second, that means that they're increasingly less likely to ask questions as opposed to what they tried to say. Because now that they've lost that self-esteem, they don't have the motivation to ask questions, they don't have motivation to do anything, to try to excel. What they're doing is now just sitting there, they're not learning, they're feeling bad about themselves, and they're feeling bad because of the model that opposition tried to set in place. Now let's look at the high achieving students. They tried to tell us that high achievers are going to be essentially exposed to more advanced topics, they're going to benefit so much more because they're not going to be anchored down. 4 responses here. First, that the grades simply aren't that important. Look, when you're a child, the most important thing isn't the grades. It isn't that you're doing university level calculus, but what it is that you're enjoying your time there, that you're having fun. First, that looks like, just being able to socialize with your friends. Second, having physical activity. Third, sure, having a small but balanced amount of academic work. That is what it is to have a very good lifestyle at school. At the point now where their students are being pushed into learning things about university that they're not going to need for another decade or more is essentially just not good for them. It's not useful for them. But second, this leads me to the other idea that it puts immense pressure on these students. What it does, it tells them that you're a highly excelled student, even though they might not necessarily be. Even though these tests haven't been proven to be able to holistically show if these students are actually more intelligent than someone else, it still puts that pressure on that they are, even though they're just pieces of clay that haven't been fully molded yet because they're still children. These pressures still exist for them. Academic pressure shouldn't exist for someone who's year 1 and 2, who's learning about multiplication. These pressures shouldn't exist for them. And third, that means it makes them increasingly more difficult for them to do anything in the academic world. Because now all they're thinking about, it's not about derivatives, it's not about calculus, it's about, oh my gosh, this is way too hard for me, I don't know how to do this because I'm just 5 years old. That's what's going to be on their mind. It hinders their academic outcomes as opposed to if you had them in a normal classroom. But even if we assume that, like, they have a significantly more inflated ego. What that means is that at the point where you tell a student that they are better than everybody else, the first thing that they're going to think is that, yes, I am better than everybody else, and I should treat people differently because I am. Because younger students at primary school don't understand the concept of like equality. What they understand is that if I'm better than someone else, I deserve more. I deserve more attention from the teacher. That's what they take away. The ego is significantly bigger. So that leads me to my second point of clash here, that about the school social environment. They never really had a response here other than to say that somehow ethnic groups are going to be benefited. So first, we like 3 responses here. First, that the division still exists between the minorities because we understand that more minorities live in impoverished areas, and that means that they're less likely to be able to get help academically. That means they're more likely to be in lower ability classes. So the division still exists regardless of not. Second, that means that the problem is that students are much less incentivized to work at the point where they're not even given the opportunity to do better. Third, that means that their academic outcomes look significantly worse for ethnic minorities. But what have we told you? First, that the division means the students don't even live cohesively anymore. Now at the point where you separated them, not only by intelligence supposedly, but also by race, that makes it increasingly more difficult for students to live cohesively in this environment. But second, that racial privileges will also arise, and that will make racism a much larger problem in the school system. But third, that means that bullying is much more rife within the school system itself. It means that you have much more students from a young age developing, thinking, even though if they just see a few of most of the students in lower ability classes all being African American, what they're going to believe is that they can only have the capacity to be in low ability classes. We get significantly better students who have a better mentality on life on our side.